Welcome, one and all, to another edition of Johnnie Torch Live, our number 61 broadcast today. Broadcast number 61 here on a very happy St. Patrick's Day. Aware in the green. Happy St. Patrick's Day to one and all. And we got a special broadcast of This Week in Comic Book Television to bring you on this St. Paddy's Day. Not going to do a Torch News Roundup with the This Week in Comic Book Television this week. Sometimes we try to put them both together. We've got the Avengers Infinity War trailer to discuss and dismantle and talk about, and I'm sure that's going to take precious, valuable airtime away from This Week in Comic Book Television. So we're going to make them separate broadcasts, and maybe tomorrow, probably Monday, I'm going to say. But we'll see what happens. I'm wearing my Green Lantern hat as the wearing of the green today with St. Patrick's Day. And let me know in the comments below what you're wearing for St. Patrick's Day. All right, let's start off the broadcast with, let's see, which should we tackle first? Well, technically, Monday saw Legends of Tomorrow, so we'll begin with this week's Legends of Tomorrow. Okay, that means I have to find the notes because that's not the way I watched them. Okay, all right, here we go. This was, oh, look at Sarah. Doesn't she look cute in those period clothes? This was the Elvis episode. Oh, yes, Elvis was in the building. And the kid that played Elvis was pretty good. I thought he was pretty good. Elvis buys a cursed guitar that actually is the vessel of the death totem, which, where do they get these totems? A death totem? Oh. Whoops, a little technical glitch here. Let me. There. All right. I wanted to make sure the all the accoutrements, so to speak, were hooked up. Okay. Okay, of course, Wally is now a part of the team. Wally joins the ship and gets to know the ship. I guess he is bunking with ISIS. What's that all about? And basically the legends need to save Rock. Long live Rock. Otherwise, Josh Groban would take over and become the primary driving force in musical entertainment. So they go to the 1950s Memphis, where they meet some, stereotypically closed-minded Christians. This is kind of the problem that Legends have had on their show, if you ask me, for a couple of seasons now. But I think this season, to be honest with you, it's become fairly unpleasant. Last season, they had the MacGuffin, so to speak, be the Spear of Destiny, which, of course, is the spear that pierced Christ on the cross. And they did a fairly good job of making that respectful and not treating it as a joke. But basically, this season, they've tried to see, the problem is when you're doing a historical program, that deals with events in history, you inevitably come across the fact that a lot of the important moments in history all boil down to Christianity. Christianity had some type of impact on most important elements in history, even so far as here, going back to when Elvis, sort of left just singing in the church and became a rock and roll icon. But I mean, going back to the Tickle Me Elmo episode, whatever that was called, when they basically were so embarrassed that they had to promote Christianity, that it was more important that they establish Christianity as the dominant religion in the world rather than whatever the Vikings were worshiping at the time. It seems to be something that they had a problem with then, and it seems even in this episode where you can see the sort of, ISIS making snide remarks or something, and it's just, they make an uncomfortable feeling around it, which makes it very conflicting when later on in the episode the song Amazing Grace, which is one of the all-time great hymns, is used to powerful effect. as they, lay the ghosts to rest, as it were. It's a very conflicting feeling. It's like they're afraid to go all in because their appeal is basically not entirely Christian all the time. So I don't know what to say. It's a very difficult episode altogether, and the season's been pretty difficult. It's probably my least favorite season so far. I don't know. The first season was kind of tough to get through, especially the first half of it. But that's an analysis for another time. But so yeah, here we are with Elvis in Memphis 1950s. And his uncle is apparently an anti-rock preacher, that rock is the music of the devil, and so on and so forth. So Isis Totem reacts to Elvis Totem, which is how they know that the guitar is a totem. Wally grabs Elvis' guitar and substitutes a replica, but Elvis can't play the replica because the ghost of his dead twin, Jesse, I believe it was, is possessing the totem guitar. In a way, this was interesting because there is a lot of speculation and talk about how close Elvis was with his departed twin, that he would in fact talk to him and, really regretted that he never survived to know him, So this was kind of an interesting take to do with, if you're going to put Elvis in the story from a historical point of view, you do something like this. Was kind of an interesting idea. Nate is the big advocate for giving Elvis back the totem because rock and roll needs to thrive, of course. Elvis' crazy uncle steals the demo, that all-important demo that he made, and puts Elvis, Nate, and Vixen in jail. Meanwhile, the romance there, sort of between Nate and Vixen, is finally back on track. It's kind of a difficult way they've placed this. They've taken Vixen out of the past, and that in itself is an abnormality. That is a, what do they call them? Like it's an abnormality in time. And so they tried to play it straight and say, well, she has to go back there at some point, and there can't be a relationship with her and Nate because it's going to ruin the timeline, because she needs to have Kawasa and all the other descendants, and the modern Nate Vixen, which they haven't really touched on in a long time. So they're obviously going back to this, it's okay for them to be an item. I don't know. All right, so Isis and Wally tried to get the demo back. Now, instead of using what everybody would expect would be the simple solution, Wally using a speed, Isis convinces him to, use a subtle hand and try to explain the situation to the crazy uncle. So he does manage to get the demo without any incident and using some tact. Meanwhile, there was a pretty amusing subplot with Mick's rat Axel, which I forgot that he was even in the show, really. That happened earlier in the season when we had the famous Adam versus the rat scene, because that's, one of the things you always do with a small miniature superhero concept. You always have them face a rat. But anyway, so Mick's rat dies, and it's very sad. And at the end of the episode, they even dedicate the episode to Axel the rat. And I guess maybe in real life, Axel passed on, and that's the reason why they're writing him off the show. I don't know. But so anyhow, there's a ghost infestation because Elvis singing raises the dead, and Elvis needs to serenade the ghosts back into the grave with Amazing Grace. And apparently that becomes Nate and Vixen's song, an unusual one to be sure. And that's about it. Then Vixen tries to turn Nate on to some of her ancestral music from, the drums or whatever it was. I really couldn't even make out what that music was. It didn't even sound like, I don't know, it just sounded like like background music. I didn't even know that he was actually listening to it yet. I was waiting for it to turn it on, and it just apparently was already on. But yeah, this episode really didn't do it for me. I don't know. Kind of a conflicting message. Probably I would give this one, I don't know, 3.5 stars out of 5. So that is 3.5 stars out of 5 for this week's Legends of Tomorrow. I will say, however, that I was happy not to see Ava, and we didn't have to get that manufactured relationship into the episode, but I'm sure that won't be long before it rears its ugly head yet again, as is the CW's custom. All right, so we will move on now to our next exciting feature, which will be, let's take a look at Gotham, because I have that next on my list here, and that is also kind of a very dense episode this week, Gotham. And I think we should get to it right off the bat. Okay, so as it starts off here, this was basically Gotham trying to mend fences, trying to get back to the status quo, because the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 episodes, they've really gone off the rails with everybody splitting up, going their own way, marching to their own tune, and it really was kind of strange, to be honest. Not Doctor Strange, or Hugo Strange. All right, so Sophia wants tribute from Lee, because now Lee is the great Empress of the Narrows, and Lee is a very complacent, leader. She wants to go along to get along, so she's happy to try to appease Sophia, although Sophia wants more tribute than the Narrows can afford. That's subplot number 1. Subplot number 2, Bruce wants Alfred back, but Alfred resists. Understandably, Bruce has been a little punk for the last 6 weeks. You want to smack that kid with a ruler. But now he's finally seen the error of his ways, as we all knew he'd have to, and he wants Alfred back, but Alfred wants him to earn his respect back, and he's not going to just come waltzing back to Wayne Manor. We have Ed still tormented by the Riddler, which was kind of a smaller plot point in this episode, but we've got the great image here of Ed in the complete Riddler costume. Well, not complete. He doesn't have the question marks yet. We're still waiting for that. Now, Ivy is the A-plot, I guess, and Ivy goes after Harv by killing most of his associates in the bar, but he's not there, and kind of leaves him a message. Bruce goes to Selena, but she doesn't want anything to do with him. Not much new there, right? She hasn't wanted anything to do with him for like a good, I don't know, season and a half now, right? So Bruce has to speak at a charity meeting or something, and he makes a heartfelt plea to Alfred on the stage, as Alfred is there listening, and it's a very it's a very moving scene that he never comes right out and apologizes to Alfred, which is what the strange thing is, because that's what Selena tells him to do. She says, tell Alfred you're sorry, and for some reason that doesn't occur to him to be not only the easiest solution, but the most appropriate solution. Anyway, we've got Jim and Harv joining forces here to try to track down Ivy, but Ivy gets to Bullock first, and there's a little confrontation scene between them, and Jim takes him out. All right, so Ivy then goes to this this function or whatever it is that Bruce Wayne is supposedly speaking at, and Bruce leaves, and Ivy locks all these people in, including Alfred. Alfred, of course, tries to play the hero. This Alfred never fails to try to play the hero. He gets knocked out, but Jim and the cops rush in. Bruce disguises himself, and for the first time, he does the cutting all the power and coming in the dark and knocking out the guys one at a time. And he saves Alfred, who implores him to save the others. Now, he comes across Jim in the hallway, and Jim shoots him, but thankfully this disguise that he got from one of, I guess, Ivy's men or something was wearing Kevlar. And so, he just, was momentarily knocked out, and then he scurries up and gets away, and Jim doesn't find out. But now there's a pretty cool confrontation between Catgirl and Poison Ivy. And, it's interesting to remember that these two were actually friends at a point before they, you know, massively grew Ivy up. And to make a long confrontation short, Catgirl, aka Selena, destroys the last vial of Lazarus water that Poison Ivy had. They fight to a stalemate when she's about to poison Selena, and Selena's got a dagger on her. So Selena, still kind of sentimental, I suppose. She disarms herself and leaves it in Ivy's hands, whether to end the fight or basically kill her. But Ivy lets her leave. And finally, at the end here, we've got Lee offers a deal to Sophia to control Jim, which kind of was on shaky ground because she already controls Jim, basically. Although they already had that tete-a-tete, so to speak, where Jim already said, look, you can't control me without exposing yourself. So I don't know, really, to be honest with you, I can't even fathom the twists and turns and double crosses and double deals that everybody's doing. At this point, it's just like a lot of gobbledygook. I don't know. But anyhow, Lee offers this deal to Sophia. Sophia refuses the deal and breaks her hand with a mallet because Gotham. And that's what we do, right? We have to have some kind of gory scene, although it was fairly mild compared to other scenes in this show. Jim finds out and goes to her at the hospital. Meanwhile, we finish up the subplot with Ed, where he tries to hang himself because of the Riddler's, they've got the Riddler with his dual personality thing. And his Riddler personality is trying to manifest now after all this time. So he'd rather kill himself than become the Riddler again. So the Riddler gives him an ultimatum where he goes to Arkham, where Penguin reveals that his letter that he gave him in the last episode was a test to get him to reveal his Riddler persona, that the Riddler persona would come back out and understand what the riddle was, that every first word in a sentence or something was that's the kind of level where his mind operates. So, it looks like Penguin is happy to mend fences with the Riddler. It was a very strange feud between them two, because it was very strange. They originally intended to make the Penguin in love with the Riddler, which of course is a very bizarre concept. Since they kind of did that, since they like tried to go for that, they dialed it back down though. And I believe even Robin Lord Taylor said that it was basically just a form of platonic friendship, although it didn't really seem that way the way they played it up. But I mean, I guess it could be viewed that way. So we don't have the Penguin as a jilted lover anymore, which is good. But now he's apparently forgiven the Riddler for, whatever feud they were having, and he's embracing him now as a partner again. Now, the problem with this, though, is the Penguin was feuding with the Riddler because the Riddler was the one that was trying to make his life miserable, because the Penguin killed Miss Kringle because Ed was in love with Miss Kringle. It's a very bizarre and complex triangle to try to understand, but I don't know. To make a long story short, that feud is finally over, and it seemed like it was going on too long to begin with. I was thinking that they were probably going to pair up Penguin with Jerome, a.k.a. Proto-Joker, but Jerome seems to still be in Arkham, and they're not doing anything with him yet. So I don't know. Maybe they're going to build to some mega team, a super group, as it were. Anyway, to tidy up here, we've got Alfred comes back to Bruce and the Wayne Manor, and Jim and Harv have mended fences. And, the whole thing with Harvey being mind controlled by Ivy sort of was that release that he needed to get out all the bad blood that he had with Jim, because, Jim sort of took his job, even though, Harvey is not the type to be in an executive position. I think it was a mistake from the beginning to put him in that position. But I mean, it's only understandable that when he, basically climbed the ladder over him, it would make sense that he wouldn't be all too pleased with the way the turn of events came out. So In the end, a pretty good episode. I think it was better than last week. It held my attention anyway. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. You know, it basically, like I said, mended fences, try to get everybody back on the same page. A lot of subplots going on, but it was pretty good for an episode of Gotham, at least. And the Riddler is there in his St. Patrick's Day attire as well. So 4 stars out of 5 for Gotham this week. And we will move on now to, let's take a look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes. All right. So we have a interesting thing going on with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where last couple of weeks they were building up the, it was the 100th episode of, what was that, 2 episodes ago? And they're trying to like build up what feels like the end of the series, what feels like Coulson's imminent demise. And this episode did feel a little bit more lighthearted, a little more hopeful, so to speak. So Coulson says Fitz is make robo limbs for Yo-Yo because, of course, he's got his own robot hand. So we're living in a technology where it can't be all that bad, the ramifications of her being armless. Although it is really sad, and when you see her trying to come to grips, no pun intended, with being a double amputee, it's also very, moving. It's very disturbing, kind of, that someone would go through that. And because in all these shows, when somebody loses an arm, they lose an arm, and you're like, well, they get the replacement, and that's it. But to lose 2 arms at one time is also a bit much, So, all right, so the main storyline here is the team needs gravitronium. Am I pronouncing that right? Gravitronium, to seal the rift that is still leaking out fear, characters, and whatever. Gravitonium, of course, was last seen in the first season, I think. That's what I mean about how the show seems to be tying up all loose ends and trying to explain where some of these, niggling plots that never went anywhere ultimately went. So Coulson keeps Deke with Fitz while the others go off, which leads to some pretty humorous stuff. Deke almost plays catch with his granddad, which was a nice scene where he's trying to play catch with him, and Fitz thinks of him as just being a nuisance, and that, you get the feeling that, that's the way it would be between them if, Deke was, a decade younger and Fitz was like maybe 3 decades older or something like that. Anyway, so the team go after a suspect that turns out to be Mac's friend, an old friend of Mac. And the guy's called the Candy Man, and they go off to find an old cybertech scientist. I think that's from the first season as well, the cybertech who knows where the gravitonium went, and the gravitonium went deep in the ocean. Meanwhile, Coulson is still reluctant to find a cure because they figure that there's so many ways in the Marvel universe at this point to cure somebody that why isn't he taking advantage of it? But he still acts like, well, I've already cheated death once and I have to let, the devil get his due or something because of the deal with the Ghost Rider. But Daisy and May disagree, and they approach the Candyman later in the episode to try to get him to find something that will, cure Coulson, which I hope will be the case. I'm pretty sure it will, though. All right, now, meanwhile, there is a subplot going on with Warner von Strucker, because Warner von Strucker goes back to the 3rd season, I believe. And I think it's Warner, isn't it? Or is it Alex? I don't know what his name is. They changed it so many times. But anyhow, the Von Strucker kid, he's got some kind of near precognizant powers where he remembers everything. And he remembers everything like to the detail. He remembers things to a fault, let's put it that way. And they want to sort of lobotomize him or something. And what's that general's name? I got it written down somewhere here. General Hale. General Hale wants to use him for her side, which To be determined, really, what her side is. She's not a Hydra member. She's certainly not a Shield member. Apparently, she's not really authorized by the U.S. military to do whatever she's doing because she's got Ruby still in the USO penitentiary, so to speak. But um, so she sort of, in Polonius fashion, looses Ruby to Von Strucker. Ruby, don't take your love to Von Strucker. We're having a lot of fun with this episode, more fun than we should be allowed to have. But anyhow, to make a long story short, he attacks her and brings out Mom, who tries to win him over, but he just wants to leave. So Scary Mom wants Ruby to win him over, and she does some of her Dove Cameron work to, persuade him, and he agrees eventually. Now, meanwhile, back at the ranch, Deke sees his mother in a vision, or as a vision, before Kree kills her, and then he in turn kills the Kree because the fear thingy is still seeping out of the rift. Now, Deke figures out the gravitonium ship is floating in the sky because they're looking for it underwater, and it's not underwater. So they go to the ship and find a small bit of gravitonium, like the size of a baseball or something. And there's a pretty humorous line there with Coulson, Mac Hammer, you can't touch this. That was pretty funny. So basically, they have 90 seconds to leave the ship before it falls once they abscond with the gravitonium. But as we see in this picture here, a robot troop awaken the sleeper, as I think the old Captain America issue was called. So Mac takes out all the robots with a shotgun axe because we love seeing the shotgun axe in action. He uses some of those robots to, have material for Yo-Yo to have cybernetic replacements there. And at the very end, Deke figures out that Fitzsimmons are his grandparents because he hears Simmons say something that his mother used to say. And he traces that back to she got that from her grandmother. So now he figured out that Simmons is his grandmother when she was young. Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, I'm glad they didn't make it his parents because you would think he'd be able to remember his parents, what they look like when they were younger. I mean, they don't look that different when they get older. Right? So they made it his grandparents, which was pretty cool. And I like Deke as a character. I can't really figure out what's going to happen to him because you would think if he stays in the past, is that going to sort of impede his life in the future? Because he's not born yet, but he's going to be born, and by the time he's born, he'll be an old man here. I don't know. It's one of those crazy conceits of the universe, so to speak, or whatever. But, it's cool. I like him. Meanwhile, Von Strucker agrees to join Ruby, and they introduce him to the Absorbing Man, who's apparently going to be back on the bad side of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, yeah, this was a pretty good episode. I enjoyed this episode a lot. Like I said, it was a lot more, it felt a lot more positive than last week's. I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars out of 5. Yes, that's 4.5 stars out of 5. And I think I'm also going to give this one episode of the week because, I don't know. It really wasn't a great week for shows this week, to be totally honest with you. But yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., 4.5 stars out of 5, and episode of the week. All right. As we move on now, we are basically more than halfway through here. Not a very full week of television. Arrow had the week off, and of course, Supergirl is still on hiatus. Okay, so next up we have Black Lightning. Black Lightning has been chugging along pretty well. They've been doing pretty good. Pretty interesting. Let's see. This week, Jeff begins to train Anissa in earnest because now she has powers, and he's going to try to make her a partner, a sidekick. And he teaches her in that high-tech dojo they have under Gambi's tailor shop. And, with the holographic images and stuff, and she's got to be careful she doesn't hit the wrong people, and that's pretty cool. It was an interesting scene. And she's still got a thing against the Confederate flag, so be careful if you're in where they live in Freedtown or something. I don't know. It's a pretty heavy-handed name, but anyway, don't wear a Confederate shirt around her because you'll wind up in the hospital. But anyway, so the town is turned against Black Lightning because they think he killed Lady Eve. That's another one of those things, one of those Spider-Man things. Eventually, they'll come to hate you. Why bother? Why bother? We've got the subplot with Lala back. Lala's back to life, and I really wish he would go back to terrorizing that 9-year-old kid from the first episode. I still crack up with that. That was so good. Oh, sorry. But you can tell a guy's unhinged when he's threatening a 9-year-old. You know what I mean? That was pretty. And the kid was just like taking it like a trooper. It was just, I don't know. I still crack up with that. That was hilarious. But Gambi, I mean, Lala's having his own problems here. Lala is he's seeing the ghost of the woman he killed because he killed her son, and then he killed her because she was trying to get back at him, and kind of confusing thing. But for whatever reason, now he's got her tattoo on his left tricep, or what you want to call it, his left pectoral. And for whatever reason, she manifests every once in a while to talk to him and sort of goad him. And he's in the car with a couple of his hoodlums, and she's like telling him to wipe out his own guys and stuff. It's like really messed up. I don't know what the heck they're going with this. I don't know where they're going with this. The guy can't even take a shower in peace. But I guess we're gonna find out. I mean, I like Lala. I think he's cool because he's so unhinged. But I don't know where they're going with that. That's crazy. All right, so one of the main things that's going on so far is the subplot with Gambi. That's been a lot of fun. Gambi knows something about, he's tied into the underworld for some reason, and Jefferson doesn't know this, and he knows about Jefferson's father's being killed. He knows something that he's not telling him. He knows something that we don't know as the audience. So Gambi, because remember, he was trying to make nice with Lady Eve last week. And then, of course, Lady Eve has died, and Black Lightning's been set up because they killed her with, like, electric weapons. So Gambi meets with some agent. I forget what the organization was called. Another one of those DEO-type organizations that not on the books. And Gambi plays like he doesn't know who Black Lightning is, but this agent wants him to kill Black Lightning because apparently Gambi used to be a operative, so to speak. And of course, that's another one of the heavy-handed things where the Black Ops guy is got to be a racist, and he's like making some kind of fried chicken joke or something. I don't know. But, it's one of those things where I don't know why they have to feel like they have to go there, because it's like you can't just have the protagonist be black and then have the antagonist be white. But the fact that he's an antagonist doesn't mean he has to be racist. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, this organization, however, apparently distributed green light back in the day. There's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. As we get back to that, we'll go to, meanwhile, Jennifer is working for Lynn, cleaning up office as an intern after the big brouhaha. And Jennifer is astute. She's a smart cookie. She's trying to find out what's going on between Jeff and Anissa, because, of course, she don't know yet that they're both superheroes. It won't be long before she finds out, but she don't at this point. Lynn is still trying to find the missing files that those bandits or whatever were after. Now, Black Lightning and Anissa go digging while not in costume. And I didn't think that was a smart move. Now, I understand that Black Lightning is wanted for murder for a crime he didn't commit, as David Banner would say. But you would think that he stands a better chance if he got caught being in costume and not looking too suspicious that he and his daughter are poking around crime scenes in his civilian identity. So I didn't think that was very smart. But again, I got people on Twitter telling me it was the smarter thing to do. I don't particularly agree, but whatever. All right, so Anissa uses her powers to break through a wall, and they find Lady Eve's body and discover that a lightning weapon killed her, something we already knew, but they had to know this. So they find out how he was framed. Jennifer, in the meantime, gets a first taste of her superpowers because she blows up her cell phone or whatever, but that's another thing. Now Gambi is getting twitchy because he's getting close to getting discovered, because they're still trying to uncover this whole thing about, you know, Jefferson's father's murder. And Gambi clearly knows something, but he's trying to play mum. You know, mum's the word. Gambi goes to church, which is nice to see, seeking redemption. And that white boy could sure sing. That kid there that was singing a religious song, which was very nice, especially at this time of year. We're in the holy season. So Jeff tells Anne that Anissa that Gambi trained him, because, you know, like I said, Gambi is sort of like, he's sort of the Alfred of the show, you know, and he's got special ops training or whatever. And they go digging through the forest and they find the killer's bodies, you know, because you kill the assassins and cover it up and everything. So to exonerate himself, he gives the info to Henderson. But while he's waiting for Henderson to show up and get the info, somebody tampers with the blaster and blows himself up. And Anissa saves Jeffrey, who, you know, is pretty impressed by that. You know, very impressed. But I don't know now if they have the evidence, because the blaster blew up. I mean, if you don't have that electric weapon, how do you know if you know, how do you have any evidence? Anyway, so Lynn ties Jeff's dad's work to Greenlight and asks Gambi about it. And Gambi kind of admits that he has to talk to Jeff and bring this all out in the open. Lynn tells Jeff to talk to Gambi, so he does, and he spills that he worked for the government, who put out drugs to make people docile. Apparently, you know, probably the black community. You know, I don't know if they come right out and say it, but that's pretty much what it was. And it created metas. Gambi protected young Jeff, but he can't protect him anymore or his family. And Jeff doesn't take the news very well, to say the least. And the show ends with Jennifer telling Anissa that she has powers. And, you know, stuff's going to hit the fan pretty soon. We're going to have the whole entire Pierce family being superheroes. But yeah, this episode was a lot of fun. We didn't get any Tobias Whale, I don't think. We got more about Lala. This was a pretty good episode, though. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. We're getting deeper into the Gambi mystery. It was fun seeing the training with Jeff and Anissa, and we got the subplot there of Jennifer getting her powers coming to light. So I thought it was a very good episode. All right, so I'm giving it 4.5 stars out of 5 for Black Lightning this week. All righty. Next up, we have... Should we save this one for last? No, let's do it now. Let's do it now and get it over with. Because this is the moment we've all been waiting for. They finally gave Iris something to do. Oh, yes. She's always been at a lack of having some kind of role in the show. But this week, Iris finally officially became the Flash. No, I am not kidding. Iris became the Flash this week. She was given Flash powers and became the Flash for a week. She became the Purple Flash. The Purple Flash. She got the purple lightning behind her. And this guy's reaction basically is the way the rest of the audience feels about this episode, I think. But seriously, I didn't think it was a bad episode, even though they they've inflated Iris's role so much during this season, and this episode is like the culmination of all of it. They made her the focal point of the show to the detriment of so many other characters. But I digress. Let's get to the story. Now, Harry and Cisco are brainstorming how to beat DeVoe. Harry wants to build a thinking cap similar to DeVoe's, and Cisco doesn't want to do it. He's afraid that Harry's going to injure himself doing this because they're going to use dark matter and the stuff that, you know, you don't want to play with. That's what caused the metas in the first place. Ralph is upset because he's still a target. Eventually, they're going to get to him, and the Thinker's going to get to him. And Iris tries to talk him out of it, but she kind of gets shut down. The only person that'll shut her down is Ralph, who, even though Iris claims to be the leader, Ralph doesn't think she's experienced enough to actually, handle those responsibilities. Now, there's this new meta, who's the other guy here in this picture, that his name was Kim. I forget something Kim, Michael Kim, something like that. He has the power to nullify powers. basically he's a conduit. I thought he should have been called conduit. They call him something like melting point, which I don't get that, but he's a conduit where he takes powers away from somebody when he touches them, and the next person he touches gets the powers that he just took away from somebody else. Now, Ralph is afraid, and he doesn't ever want to come out of his room. Harry's first test goes well until the thinking cap goes on fire. Iris wants to go with Joe in the field because Joe is a cop, and that's his job. And the meta threatens Iris at knife point, and Flash comes to the rescue at this bank robbery. In the exchange, Iris receives Barry's powers, and it's a transference that, for some reason, it's not something that, like, on the molecular level really needs to change. I mean, it's like a very confusing thing, because you would think that they would have to be, like, changed at the molecular level, you know what I mean? And it's like Iris could basically get his powers by catching a cold, you know what I mean? It's probably I'm not articulating what I'm trying to say well enough, but it's basically a strange concept that you can just switch powers from one person to another. Okay, I'll buy it. I'm into comics. That's cool. Now, Melting Point, he doesn't really have a costume or anything, so he's just like trying to get away. Cisco and Harry, their arguing never gets old. And it's really funny to see because they finally put it in the forefront in this episode where you see them, going at it. And Spider-Man 2 is evoked. The Locutus of Borg is invoked, which is a lot of, fun stuff when Cisco gets on a tear like that. It's always fun. So there's a burning building, and Iris goes through the building to save people, but she gets trapped, and Vibe has to come and save her. She's adept but inexperienced, so when Barry tells her what to do, she's still inexperienced enough that she doesn't do it right. And that's kind of, good that they've done it that way. They didn't make her all powerful. But Caitlin can't seem to reverse it. It's one of those things where you just got to do the same thing but in reverse with Melting Point. Cisco finally agrees to help Harry on his thinking cap thing, and Cisco finally makes her a costume, such as it is. Now, Joe corners the guy who got the flame powers. He looks like Bulk from Power Rangers. He got it from, like, this aristocratic guy with the flame powers. And actually, I honestly thought what they were going to do, and I shouldn't give them any ideas, was give Iris the flame powers that guy had, the guy that Bulk. And so that way Iris would finally be a meta and should actually be a member of the team. Maybe that's something they should do. They'd have Frost with the frost powers. They'd have Iris with the heat powers. She'd be her own Firestorm because there's no Firestorm in the DC universe anymore. And it would, maybe sort of like the old John Diggle thing where they, finally put him in a costume after so many years. But this is kind of the thing where you can complain all you want about Olicity and Arrow, but they never did take her out of that Oracle position. They never did, no matter what, say, let's put her in a costume and pretend like she can, keep up with the big boys. I don't know. So Kim goes to get the powers back because he's seemingly religious and doesn't want, powers in the wrong hand and the wrong hands of people and this and that. So Iris captures Kim, like we see right here. Harry puts on the cap and tells her to create a tidal wave to take out Bulk and his fire powers, because apparently this is something that Barry never did, which I could swear he did this back. Didn't he do this back when there was the first season, I think? Was it with Weather Wizard? Oh no, he was trying to stop a tidal wave. Is that what it was? I don't know. But anyhow, Harry tells her to create a tidal wave, and that'll take care of Bulk and the big heat wave that he was putting on, not to be confused with Mick. So she ends up taking out that guy. Kim restores Flash's power and apparently joins the team. He's going to stick around for a while because Obviously, this is a pretty powerful gift to have, where he can take the powers away from the Thinker, because the Thinker has the powers of how many bus metas now? I don't remember. You know, there was the Dwarf Star, the Hazard, and Country Babe. I don't know, but there was a lot of them. The Fiddler. There's a lot of them, and he's got all those powers now. This will be a way to take them away from him, but I don't know if that'd be too much for this guy. Where's he going to send those powers to? Now, Ralph and Iris make up, and everybody's happy, but Iris didn't want to stay the Flash. Now, this is the thing that bugs me. Iris didn't want to stay the Flash because she says it's Barry's destiny. Basically, she stole his powers, even if it wasn't intentional. Because Barry's like, oh, well, you could have kept the powers, and I would understand because you got them. And I'm like, you know, you didn't lose them on a bet, Barry. It was like a freak thing. You know, you've got the experience. You were struck by lightning. You've been the hero for these years. Why would you just let Iris take that power? I mean, I understand if she got powers of her own that you just would help her along, but why would you take this passive role when you were the Flash? You were the one that was supposed to have those powers by all rights. Again, you know, he doesn't want to sleep on the couch. I guess he felt like he had to say that. I don't know. Anyway, Iris decides to go back to blogging since she quit her job. We heard this, that's the reason why she hasn't been a reporter for the last 2 seasons, is she quit her job as a reporter. And she decided to go back to blogging, which is kind of where she belonged before they made her, quote unquote, the boss of Team Flash. So to wrap it up, Cisco and Harry work on the Cap. Harry wants to go on and keep experimenting with this, but Vibe pulls him out. He has the names of the last 2 bus metas. I don't know how he figured this out, but he figured it out with Thinking Cap. My biggest fear is, what effect will the Thinking Cap have on Harry? Is this going to somehow alter him mentally? Is this going to give him some kind of problem that's going to manifest later on? Is this going to kill him off? No, I hope not. I don't want to see that happen. But like I said, there's a lot of fun stuff between Harry and Cisco. Didn't really have too much of a problem with the Iris. Like I said, the last couple episodes, they really haven't done too badly in portraying her. She, you know, was somewhat more annoying back, you know, in the early parts of the season. But again, there really was there any clamor for Iris to become the Flash that I was not aware of? Perhaps there was this big outcry for Iris to become the Flash that I was unaware. But for what I know, nobody really cared to see Iris with these powers, and they simply felt like one of those, you know, filler episodes. That's what I'm thinking of, filler episodes where they just kind of wanted to do something goofy, and, well, they did. All right, so I'm going to give this episode, I'll give it 4 stars out of 5. You know, that might be over-grading it somewhat, but like I said, I think the Harry Cisco stuff is what really made up for it, to me anyway. So 4 stars out of 5 for The Flash this week. All right, so we've got one last order of business, and this should not take very long because this was another one that was a very filler episode. We've got the most recent episode of Macgyver. And this was a very, like I said, fillerish episode where now Mac, Jack, Riley, and Bozer try to find out what Maddie knows about Mac's dad. But they're pulled off of this on a mission, leaving Bozer to fend for himself. Now, the subplot has Maddie wanting Bozer to investigate the break-in her house, which Jack, Billy Baldwin, and IT girl from Phoenix Foundation facilitated the previous week. Her name is Jill, I remember that, but I don't remember Billy Baldwin's character's name. What was it again? It was something weird, like Edwin or something. I don't know. Riley's dad. Anyway, so he's tasked with that, and you know he's not a good liar, and he's trying to fumble around and convince her that he's, you know, in the dark as much as she is. All right. Meanwhile, Riley, Macgyver, and Jack Dalton go after a bad guy that's, of course, some terrorist or something. It's always one of those things. And they go after him, and he's hiding out in Chernobyl. where apparently there's still radiation, and there'll probably be radiation there until, the year 3517. So they got to try to do this without, dying of radiation sickness or something. And they obviously risk life and limb. Jack makes a lot of superhero jokes, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, that, especially the all-time classic, "Don't make me angry. You won't like me when I'm angry." A great tribute to the Incredible Hulk show. But again, it was really not very memorable. And I like seeing the three of them in action again, because lately we don't have this kind of adventure type thing. Lately, it's been like spy stuff. So it was a little more fun to see some adventure type stuff and seeing Riley with the two guys again. But again, very forgettable. So I'm just going to give it a 3. That's 3 stars out of 5 for Macgyver this past week. 3 stars out of 5 for Macgyver. So once again, we come to the end of another broadcast. And thank you for joining. We will do a Torch News Roundup in our next broadcast, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to check out some of my other videos, because, those other videos, those older videos, they need a little love too, They need some attention every once in a while. They sit there, they don't get no higher view count, and it gives them a complex, you know what I mean? So you want to check them out. I'm sure you'll find some of them to the right of this video. If not, I'll probably put a couple of annotations or whatever at the end. Also, check out my Twitter page, as always. We've got a new poll of the week question. We'll talk about that in the Torch News Roundup, but I'm sure if you go to my Twitter page, you'll find the poll of the week, and that's got about 4 or 5 more days left on that, so you've got plenty of time to vote. Check out The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon, Private Eye, the greatest comic of all time, although I might be a little biased. But we've got a free preview up. If you go to the link in the description below, where you can see a couple of pages for free, because I'm nice like that. Remember to check out my website. You'll also see more information about my upcoming appearance at KidsCon 2018. I will be in Nashua, New Hampshire on June the 10th to sign some copies of The Adventures of Bullets Bourbon, Private Eye. Yours truly will be there, and I will be in costume, so to speak. I'll be dressed as Bullets Bourbon. That went over big in the Mice Expo the first day when I was there, and I was dressed as Bullets Bourbon. A lot of people like that, I think. But it's a family-friendly event. It's for the kids. I love having something that's family-friendly, because I met a lot of families and kids at the Mice Expo, but this will be a totally family-friendly event. So you might want to check that out when the time comes. So once again, thank you for joining us for the 61st broadcast this week in comic book television. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I've yet to hear anybody tell me what they think about this week in comic book television. I do these shows every week and never hear from you people. So let me know what you think about these episodes in the comments below. And once again, happy St. Patrick's Day. Until next we meet, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.